Ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, let's start this short wrap-up session. Reports from the morning parallel sessions. The theme of this conference is sharing experiences, exploring new methods and assessing socio-economic impacts. So we are, those who were wondering yesterday why we are reporting from this parallel session. Well, it is exactly because you can't be only in one session. So we would like to share experiences and knowledges. So that's why we will do this. And I ask all of you to also to prepare yourself for the final session in the afternoon later today, so that what might be your question to the keynote speakers, or your observation, or your highlight coming from these discussions, so that we can really bring something new, even create new methods. What is all about of this conference. Now I invite the rapporteurs of the morning sessions to come here, and they will have short reports. And the first one will be Margaret Malin, the report coming from session number 6, please.
Okay, so session number 6 brought us to the Baltic Sea region, where we looked at the impacts of climate change there. And in the first place, we learned about how in Lapland, regional strategies began in 2008, and our presenter there traced the historical development of climate awareness and regional strategies for change adaptation into the regional development program in Finnish Lapland, with the task of formulating a regional climate change adaptation and mitigation strategy. And this also included the consideration of how to utilize opportunities posed by climate change. So there were positive and negative aspects listed. The positive essentially looked at possibilities for hydroelectric power and other renewable energy, growth of forests, meaning more wood for bioenergy and new materials, more agricultural opportunities and new transportation routes. Negative aspects being threat to winter tourism, new pests, changes that are harmful to reindeer, loss of permafrost, harmful to logging, and flooding. So it was a very utilitarian approach to the changes. And it was emphasized that climate change must be discussed within the frame of regional development in Lapland. And Elona spoke about the Vuotos water reservoir project and the value of forests, the carbon sink there, Lapland's peripheral location being changed to a central point, and so on. So then next we heard about climate change in Estonia, and some things were emphasized at the beginning of this presentation, one of them being that climate warming itself is less important than the frequency of extreme phenomena. So the mean temperatures and are one thing, and the frequency of extreme changes are something else. Then also just the complexity of and lack of consensus on some of the issues was emphasized, such as the methodology, which goes into one of the big themes of this conference. Some of the differences in graphing of temperatures was shown through through the different models, and there were several different models for different things, such as, not just temperatures, but sea ice and precipitation and a number of other factors. One highlight of this, actually, in terms of an assertion made, was that the intensification of westerly winds in winter is a large causal factor, obviously interrelated, but very much an instigator for some of the other effects that were being observed in this report. So then the S-Klima project was described with the estimation of climate variability, developing climate change scenarios, and modeling of river discharge and sea ecosystems. So we saw again a region's approach to both assessing and interpreting in a meaningful way the results of climate change in that region. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Next one, Julia Martin from Group Parallel System number 7, please.
Thank you. Session 7 was very informative, very fascinating, and also very dense. I'm a little bit overwhelmed, I have to say. But it provided us with a range of approaches to the observation, evaluation of, and adaptation to change. The first presentation introduced the notion of maritime regionalism as an analytical frame for the observation of territorial challenges in the Arctic. Arctic transformation was said is driven by globalization, modernization, and climate change. This creates environmental and socio-economic challenges in the Arctic, connected especially with the maritime environment and its use. Maritime regions are affected by maritime transport issues, new technologies enabling exploitation of maritime resources, and they're also always focusing, or have to focus economically, on the importance of keeping the maritime environment intact. The question of what constitutes a region was discussed in this after the first talk, whether it is determined primarily geographically and territorially, or whether it is more issue or stakeholder defined, as in the case, for example, trans-regional shipping routes. Most interestingly, I found the notion of regions overcomes potentially the importance of national borders. In the second talk, the second talk presented the focus of the work of CAF, Conservation of Arctic Flora and Fauna. CAF has recently identified a lack of coordination in biodiversity research and monitoring in the Arctic. In response to this, the Arctic Biodiversity Data Service is being currently developed as a comprehensive online information base, bringing together existing biodiversity data and making them comparable on a variety of scales and for a variety of research purposes, which I think could be extremely useful also for people like me, who are not a biologist, but just as a geographical information basis also. The second focus of CAF is the ABA, the Arctic Biodiversity Assessment, which has brought to light, among other key findings, that climate change is the main driver of biodiversity change. Therefore, CAF is working towards integrating the issue of biodiversity into all mainstream policy fields, such as fishing, tourism, shipping, oil and gas development, and mining. An implementation plan following up on the ABA is currently underway. The third talk was a very insightful and deep, also bottom-up study about regional development in northwestern countries, which have been affected by kind of a drain of population, especially among younger people. The focus areas were Iceland, Faroe Islands, and Greenland, and the two examples shown in this session were two regions from Iceland, Borgarbyggð and Fjallabygd. It was fascinating to see for me that these two regions, at first they seem very similar, but then they are totally not. They also, and it was presented in much detail, that, for example, the distance to the capital had a great effect on how the two municipalities could react to the economic crisis in Iceland. Another thing I picked up, and it was kind of heartwarming almost, is that people that were asked what they thought was important for keeping the communities intact and developing them and giving them a future, was that managing changes was easier with younger people around and with more newcomers. So that's very fascinating, because we often think that local communities, rural communities especially, are kind of closed communities, but that is maybe not necessarily the case. Also, the focus on education was a very uplifting finding from this talk. But also problems were mentioned, infrastructural problems and chances at the same time. The tunnel between two communities was mentioned that could bring an increased labor market, but could also create more complicated competition issues. And then finally, in the last talk, again, a very intense and deep study into polar tourism, which brought very enlightening differentiations between a geographical approach and sociological approach to polar tourism studies. Also, a differentiation was made between Arctic and Antarctic tourism, which is to be considered when developing a tourism product in polar tourism. Peripheral problems make it difficult to develop tourism in Arctic regions or polar regions, and the lack of infrastructure and human capital and geographical remoteness were most prominent examples for this. But these challenges could also become opportunities and make polar tourism a very special product that is different from everything else. And what I find almost amusing and also very interesting was the differentiation that was made between different types of polar tourists. The history lovers, the conquerors, the scientists, the naturalists, the romance seekers, etc. And it led to the question, finally, what is a tourist? And are we maybe also all tourists, as we are here traveling, working, enjoying, and being everywhere on the globe? And then finally, the question was, how will climate change come into all this, and could climate change be an attraction in itself, which is maybe also a slightly more sincere or darker note at the end of this talk. So the session provided fascinating new ways of framing different aspects of development in the Arctic, which is development which is occurring and observable or might occur in the future.
Thank you very much. Then the last one by Bianca Tian Chang from parallel session number 8, please.
I am here to report session 8, which is a very interesting session presented by 4 Icelandic female presenters and giving us a very interesting aspect in the healthcare in the High North. And the first presenter gives us a presentation on giving birth in rural areas, which is a very important thing. And she pointed out the fact that hospitals where women can give birth in the rural areas are decreasing in Iceland. And safety is not always the main reason. The money, the financial system is also a very important factor. She pointed out late pregnancy difficulties, and due time is a 4-week period, so it is difficult for women to go into capital area and stay there to wait. She gives us some statistics on survey and researches. It shows that in the north there's a shorter distance between healthcare systems, but there's rather harsh weather conditions in the winter, whereas in the south there's a long distance to go between areas, but there will be less snow and good road conditions. There is also a balance between good maternity care and high technology. In her research, it's mainly focused on women with normal pregnancy conditions instead of high danger pregnancy conditions. So in the normal conditions, good maternity care is more important than high technology. She raises the question of where is it safe to give birth to a child, and where do people want to live and give birth to a child, and is it a good thing that we have so few places that you can deliver? It is apparent that it is rather safer to give birth at midwife experienced maternity care than in a fast-speeding car, ambulance, or rather in a helicopter. And she summed this up by pointing out it's important to see the whole picture of the whole country, and to give women the opportunity to give birth in the rural areas where it's good maternity care, rather than going to the capital Reykjavik area or Akureyri to give birth and happen to have it on the way. And healthcare, giving birth facilities is a normal healthcare issue rather than a luxury to cut down because of financial problems. So she suggested that the government should have the ability and mandate to fund this very important aspect. And moving on to the second reporter, she was talking about the recruitment and retain of healthcare professions in rural areas. She also raised question about why healthcare professions are reluctant to work in rural areas, what required to start, and what is the reason they leave, and what are the possible aspects. It turns out that she, by the result of a survey, with a composition of different professions, gender, and state of career, that the top 3 reasons why healthcare professions don't stay in rural areas is lack of professional support and lack of career opportunities and family reasons. She pointed out that professional and social factors are important, and we should increase the focus on the women healthcare professions and younger generation, and there should be an early and correct exposure to the healthcare of students. And the third reporter gives us also a survey of public perspective on healthcare service in rural areas. So it's a survey conducted in 2 small towns in Iceland, Ólafsfjörður and Siglufjörður. And according to this survey, and they tried to find out how satisfied the inhabitants to feel about the healthcare system in where they live. It turns out that in general, 89% of inhabitants were very satisfied with the access to healthcare facilities, which the older age group has a higher ratio of satisfaction of 94%, where the younger generation shows a lower ratio. And the varieties and quality of the healthcare facilities received less level of satisfactory, where only 78% of inhabitants showed answered with a high satisfactory in quality of the healthcare. So in general, Siglufjörður inhabitants are more pleased with the healthcare in their area because there was a hospital in this area, and women are in general more pleased, and older people are more pleased than younger generations. And this research is only conducted between the tunnel between these 2 towns are connected, and there is more need to investigate to do this ongoing project to find out how it changed and compare how it is after the tunnel was built. And the third speaker talked about psychological trauma, stress, and violence. And she had a special link to climate change, and she introduced us to psychological trauma, and the cause of psychological trauma could be death, divorce, violence, accident, and alcoholic parents, which could be likely in the north, and war and life-threatening medical conditions and dramatic change in their lifestyle. And in the context of climate change, there would be social and mental stress due to the change of lifestyle, and the following consequently will be illness and disease, challenges of traditions, and the way of living. And also another important factor is dislocation of families, and the adapting process could be very difficult, and it could lead to stress, and in the worst scenario will be depression and self-destruction behaviors. And it also affects the relationship between spouse, children, family, and the whole society. And that's what it was about, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Any immediate questions or reactions? Or are you hungry? Okay, if not, then let's thank for the rapporteurs for the excellent report. And I would like really you to understand that they are under pressure. I mean, the oral presentations we are just immediately after the parallel sessions we are having. So I mean, this is not easy to do. So thank you.